Let's imagine your future, think 10 to 20 years from now. What do you want it to look like? Do you want to keep working your 9-to-5 job that you don't really enjoy? Or do you want it to look something like this? You have the financial freedom to work if you choose, but you don't have to if you don't want to because you have enough passive income coming in to fund your lifestyle. Instead of working, you spend your time with friends and family, doing hobbies you enjoy or traveling the world. Hi friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Eva, I have an MBA and I'm here to teach you all about entrepreneurship, personal finance and lifestyle improvements that you can make to help you live a better life. Today I'm going to share what I like to do to ensure that I'm going to be able to retire early and not have to work until I'm 65. Most of our lives are told that the order in which our life should play out is go to school, study hard, get a good paying job, work for 40 years plus, and then enjoy life from about 65 or 70, where you get to retire and finally do all those things on your bucket list. Growing up, this concept was the standard. No one really deviated from it. But what I didn't realize is that this concept of retirement was only developed in 1880 in an effort to get more young people into the workforce. The Prussian government decided to pay a pension to those over 70 so that they could stop working, allowing for young people to take those jobs. Back then, the life expectancy was around 70 anyway. So this system meant that those lucky enough to live longer would experience a few years of retirement, but most would still work for their entire lives. Now in the 21st century, life expectancy is much higher, between 82 and 86 in Australia and between 73 and 80 in the US. This means a couple of things. Firstly, you will have a bit more time to enjoy retirement, but secondly, you also need more money saved to ensure that it lasts you. Now, most of us here probably don't want to wait until we're 65 or 70 to actually enjoy life. I couldn't imagine anything worse than trying to travel the world or learn how to surf when you're 70, when everything hurts and you're more prone to illnesses. Retiring early means that we need to have enough money saved to ensure that we can actually survive without working. So what strategies can we implement to ensure that we can retire early and still have enough money to enjoy the kind of lifestyle we want? Well, firstly, we need to think about the kind of lifestyle that we're wanting to have. Do you want to live in a giant house, take first-class holidays each year, and own expensive cars? Or do you want a decent house with an average car and you're happy to take economy flights for your holidays? All these lifestyle choices will change how much money you need to have saved by the time that you're planning to retire. Think about what things actively increase your quality of life and what things you don't really care about too much. For me personally, I don't really care what kind of car I drive. As long as it gets me from where I need to go and is comfortable enough, then I'm good. This means that I'm not planning on buying a Ferrari or any other expensive car, so I don't need to account for this in my savings and retirement plan. Have a think about whether you want a big house, your kids to go to private school, one or more nice cars, how often you plan to go on holidays, or any other large expenses that you want. From there, we can estimate how much you actually need saved up by the time you retire. Do this by looking at your current expenses, remove the things that you don't need, and add on any extra things that you want in the future. For example, let's take a look at Jenny's situation. She currently spends $42,000 a year, or $3,500 a month. This includes $1,500 a month in rent, $300 for utilities, $500 for food, $200 for petrol, $200 for insurances, $300 for a phone, $70 for a cat, $300 for activities, and $400 for miscellaneous expenses. In the future, she wants to own a nice house and for her 2 kids to go to a private school, but she doesn't mind reducing her miscellaneous expenses by 50%. Adding the nice house would mean a mortgage and other related expenses of say $2,500 a month. The private school will cost her $2,500 a month as well. Then decreasing her miscellaneous expenses will bring her expenses down by $200, making her total monthly expenses $6,800 a month, or $81,600 a year. This means that for her to live comfortably, Jenny will need at least $81,600 coming in each year to fund her lifestyle. So how do we work out how much she'll actually need in her retirement fund for this lifestyle? The answer is in something you might have heard about online, and that's the Financial Independence Retire Early Movement, or FIRE for short. If you've heard of FIRE, you might assume it's only for people with very high income. That's not necessarily true. The main part of FIRE is to lower your expenses so that you're able to save the majority of your income. So rather than saving 20%, you're saving about 70% of your income. To make this possible, most people need to focus on lowering their expenses or earning more money. This could be by moving into a share house, selling your car and buying a second-hand one, not ordering takeout, not using a clothes dryer, taking public transport, getting a second part-time job, or anything else that will help you save. While it's true that you don't need a super high income, you do need to be earning enough to allow you to save after you reduce your expenses. The earlier you want to retire, the higher your income needs to be. So if you're 20 years old and you want to retire at 30, you will need to make sure that you're both earning and saving a lot. At this age, that's usually pretty tough unless you have a high-paying job or your own side hustle. If you're struggling for ideas, you can check out my video on 10 side hustles you can do to earn some extra income. Within the FIRE movement, there are 3 types of strategies: fat FIRE, lean FIRE and barista FIRE. Fat FIRE is for someone with a traditional lifestyle who aims to save substantially more than the average worker, but doesn't want to reduce their current standard of living. It generally takes a higher salary and aggressive savings and investment strategies for this to work. Lean FIRE focuses on reducing expenses and living a minimalistic lifestyle. People doing Lean FIRE save extreme percentages of their take-home income, and many live on less than $25,000 per year. Barista FIRE is an in-between option. These people quit their full-time jobs but still work part-time. They can spend a bit more than those doing Lean FIRE, as their income is a combination of their part-time job and their investment income. The key with this is to find work that you love doing so that you don't feel like it's work. Think of something that you would continue to do even if it didn't pay. For me, that's this YouTube channel. For you, it could be a side hustle or a regular part-time job. The FIRE movement's basic rule for retirement is that once you have 30 times your expenses invested, you can retire. From there, you can withdraw 4% of the total each year to fund your lifestyle. The 4% rule was formed in 1990 and basically states that someone can withdraw up to 4% of their portfolio in the first year of retirement, then adjust the amount for inflation in subsequent years and have a 90% chance that they will not run out of money for at least 30 years. Now for FIRE, I personally think you should aim to lower the percentage you withdraw to increase your chances of having enough money to last you. So for Jenny, this means that she'll need about $2.5 million saved before she can retire. Now if she's looking to retire in 10 years, that means she'll need to save $250,000 a year. If she thinks she can do that by getting a side hustle, or if her and her partner both have high-paying jobs, then this might be achievable. Otherwise, she might need to wait another 10 years, as then she'll only have to save $125,000 a year. She could also reduce her expenses by not sending her kids to a private school, which would mean she'd only need about $1.5 million in her retirement fund to retire, which would then work out to saving $75,000 a year for 20 years. Now that we know how much money we need to retire, it's time to work out a plan for how we can actually save that much money. Typically, when people talk about savings, you're probably thinking of money sitting in a bank. While that's great for short-term savings, this concept of time value of money exists. If you don't know what this is, it basically means that $1 today would not be worth $1 in a year's time. It will be worth less. This is because each year we have inflation. Typically, inflation sits at around 4%, but in recent years this has been much higher. As inflation occurs, the cost of everything goes up by the amount of inflation. This means that any cash you're holding will be worth less after a year because your buying power will be reduced. Say you want to buy a loaf of bread for $3, but you want to buy it in a year's time. So you get that $3 and you put it in your pocket and you wait a year. Then you get to the grocery store and your bread now costs $3.12. Yet you still only have $3 in your pocket. Now, if you had put that $3 into a high interest savings account that pays 3% interest, that $3 would have turned into $3.09, which is almost enough to buy your loaf of bread, but still not quite there. So how can you actually make sure that your money is worth more by the time you choose to retire? The answer is investing. Whether you choose property, shares, or something else, it's important to invest into assets regularly. In the last 30 years, property has had an average return of 10.3%, while shares have had an average return of 10.4%. Property has a much higher cost of entry, typically around 20% of the total price if you're buying a house. However, there are other avenues into real estate investing, such as real estate investment trusts. They invest into real estate and can be bought like shares. Shares have a much lower cost of entry. You can enter the market with less than $1,000, sometimes even as low as $100. So why do shares and property typically pay much higher than keeping your money in a bank? That's because of something called the risk to reward ratio. Keeping your money in a bank is a very low risk strategy. The likelihood of a bank collapsing is quite low, and most countries' governments will guarantee up to a certain amount to customers if a bank were to collapse. Here in Australia, that's $250,000. While property and shares have a higher risk. For example, your tenant might run late on their rental payment, or a company you invested in might go into administration. The key to investing is diversification. Diversification is an investment strategy based on the premise that a portfolio with different assets will perform better than one with a few. A way to diversify shares is rather than buying one share of one company, I could buy one share of an exchange traded fund or an ETF. An ETF is a collection of the top few companies. For example, the ASX 200 is the top 200 companies in Australia, or the S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the US. When you're buying an ETF, you're not just buying one company, you're buying a tiny portion of all the companies within that ETF. So if one or two of them were to collapse, the risk you took has been minimized and you won't feel the impact as much as if you had just bought one company. So if we're looking at a complete portfolio, someone might choose to put 35% of their money into property, 35% into ETFs, 10% into government bonds, and keep 20% in a high interest savings account. The portfolio will continue to grow through receiving dividend income, share price of stocks growing, receiving rental income, net worth of the property increasing, bonds expiring, and interest earned in the high interest savings account. Say you can average about an 8% return on this kind of portfolio. That means your money would be increasing faster than the rate of inflation. So that $3 you had last year would now be worth $3.24, more than enough money to buy that loaf of bread. Although the best way to continue the growth of your portfolio is to leave the money in there so that you can experience something called compound interest. Compound interest is when you earn interest on both the money you've saved and the interest you've earned. This helps to maximize the amount you have saved at retirement. So for me personally, my aim is to increase my income by starting a side hustle, as well as reducing my expenses where I can and invest the saved money into a variety of assets. Part of investing into assets is creating my own assets. In another video, I mentioned how I set up an Etsy shop and was able to make over $100 in my first month of selling digital products. Creating assets that can continue to generate passive income is a great way to increase your cash flow and enable you to be able to invest more. So that's how I'm personally thinking about the idea of retiring early. Let me know what things you're planning to do to retire early in the comments below. If you've gotten this far through the video, then leave a like. It really helps my channel out. And if you want to see more content from me, then hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.